the funding space lacks a lot of creativity. People are calling for philanthropy to be a lot more radical than it is and to take a lot more risks, and it can't. When I moved into grant making, I felt really squashed. I felt like I couldn't bring out new ideas or things that I wanted to change. The questions that we ask are so rigid. Highly Sprung in general had a huge impact on my life and how I navigate tricky situations. Don't cry. It's the truth. Because Highly Sprung does things in a way that is just so magical.
Where's the effing creativity?
Thank you very much.
You're so clever.
I've been practicing.
Thank you very much for joining us today, the incredible Sian Lewis. We're very excited to welcome you to our podcast. And just for you, we're going to say the title for you. Are you ready?
Yeah.
It's like a prestigious moment.
Welcome to
Where's
the effing creativity?
Yay! Love it. What a great name.
Thank you very
Honestly.
Yeah, we're very much enjoying it and all that it brings. So today you're joining us on a very special episode where we're really focusing in on talking about a very big F, funding. And you're someone who I think is lived in the world of funding for quite some time. So I wondered, Sian, if you could tell us, thinking about maybe a little bit of your funding side, but also more generally, how does creativity play a part in your life, your job, your brilliantness?
Yeah, big question. Big question. I've been thinking about this because I think the funding space lacks a lot of creativity. I think it's one of the issues with funding is that I am a grant manager, and I think grant managers are kind of told that feeling and creativity is not a part of the process. And I think that creates really rigid systems that don't adapt, which we're seeing, I think, now in philanthropy more broadly, that people are calling for philanthropy to be a lot more radical than it is and to take a lot more risks. And it can't, because people aren't like able to be creative in those spaces. And I think it's something I've really found difficult with entering into kind of full-time grant making, is that inability to like change systems and use creativity to do it. And I think it creates a lot of issues in the space, because it means that for me, creativity, I think I'd say I'm quite a creative person. I think Highly Sprung really
Absolutely.
like helped me find that and really taught me the value of being creative and kind of like allowing my emotions to come through creativity. And I think when I moved into grant making, I felt really squashed. I felt like I couldn't bring out new ideas or things that I wanted to change. And it creates a lot of tension. And I think for me, a big reflection is that like we need more creativity in grant making and philanthropy in general, because we have amazing organizations that like don't fit our criteria just because our criteria have been what they have been for a long time. Or we have grant makers who are supposed to be really relational humans, but are told that they can't be because of the process that we sit behind. And I think for me, that's like creativity is at the heart of that, of like, how can we rebuild the system so that we can be humans and we can have really honest conversations? Because, yeah, it's important to do that.
I was going to say, I really love that. And it's interesting for me to hear you say that we have to remove feeling and creativity from decision making. And I think when we write applications, I think we put a lot of feeling into it, and we really want you to feel what the impact is going to be. So that's really interesting.
I was going to pull up on what you were saying, because I know that recently we've been working with different organizations, and we're trying to sell a vision and trying to explain what this creativity and what this process may look like. And actually those purse strings are being held by people who possibly don't understand or can't see that vision. And do you think that we're in a position at the moment where funding is tight, there is
Hmm.
less money going round. The cost of everything is going up, but the pots of money are coming smaller. And do you think our creativity is being limited and the country's creativity is being squashed because of that system?
Yes. One, like honestly, 100%. I think that like when I'm sitting in like decision making spaces and funding, the questions that we ask are so rigid and like they need to be because it's a real like it's a tricky one because you want your process to be fair, you want it to be equitable, you kind of want to take some of the feeling out of it, because you want to be able to do that. But then but we are also talking about organizations that like do this because they love it, right? And they do it, or they do it because they see it as a real need and it's like a part of who they are. That's what drives them. So I think when you take out the like feeling and you take out that creativity and that space, you create like this weird tension that is really difficult. And it's difficult, I think, for grant makers to hold too, because a lot of people in philanthropy and in funding are there because they care very deeply about the work, right? They're there because they want to fund amazing work. And instead they're having to turn down amazing organizations time and time again. And that's really hard. And I don't think I don't want this to be like, woe is the grant maker because they sit in a very privileged space. But I think it is a really difficult situation. And like, we have to have really hard conversations about organizations that when we have calls with them, we see how brilliant they are and we see how amazing it is. But you can't fund everyone. And I think that's a real, as the purse strings get tighter, I think it's just becoming really difficult to navigate that balance. And it's becoming hard on every every space. And I think I've been doing a lot of reflecting because I'm coming out of full-time grant making. And like it was a real privilege and I'm very grateful for the learning and the people that I've met. But I feel a bit of a sigh of relief because I'm such a relational person. I love connections. I love building community. And in grant making, I had like swung the other way, I think, because I was like, I don't want to give people the wrong impression. I don't want people to think they're going to get money and they're not just because I'm like an animated, like,
Nice person.
yeah, nice person. And I think it's a real tricky balance. And we're seeing a lot of tension with it at the moment. And we're also seeing tension with the fact that grant making funding in general are trying to bring in a lot of new voice. Like I got the job, I think, because they wanted people with lived experience of working on the ground in communities, because that's what was part of what we funded. But when you bring in new voice and you bring in new energy, people look at things differently and say that why is it built this way? It doesn't work because people are creative and are like, have we tried this? Have we tried that? And I think the philanthropy is just like really struggling with like we can't do all these changes, but also we're bringing in new people who want that. So it's a funny one to be in, but I don't envy organizations like yourselves who are on the other side of that because it's really hard.
Well, we really appreciate the fact that we have you in our lives and brilliantly on our board as one of our first ever under 30 trustee, if I'm allowed to say that. Woohoo.
Yeah.
Young
Woo!
person trustee.
If I was under 30, I'd shout about it. So
Yay!
So it's fantastic to kind of have that kind of experience and voice meeting us where we at on the other end. So
Mm.
that's something that we're very, very excited and privileged to have.
absolutely.
But I wanted to take you back now a little bit to think about, because you didn't just happen upon Highly Sprung as a trustee. You've actually had a relationship with us that goes way, way, way back. And I wondered if there were any thoughts that you've ever had about how funding in Highly Sprung has actually had an impact on you and the choices and direction that your life has gone in.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I've been at Highly Sprung since I was like 4 or 5, until left for university. So, yeah, I mean, Highly Sprung in general had a huge impact on my life and how I navigate tricky situations and how I go into challenge. Like Highly Sprung really taught me a lot of the skills I needed to enter the world. So I'm grateful for that. But it's an interesting question because I think when you are a Sprung, when you are in Sprung Youth, you don't think about funding at all. I think it's something like you just like are like, great, this opportunity, like I'm gonna go be a clown over here. That's awesome. I'll go do that. You don't think, oh, there's a rhyme and a reason why this project has come to life.
Mm.
And I think it's just really interesting. And I think that's why I'm very proud that Highly Sprung has a youth board now, because they are bringing that kind of like thought process and decision making through the young people, which is incredible. And yeah, so it's a tricky question because I think like funding surely shaped my entire Highly Sprung experience, because you were frontally working behind the scenes, like trying to figure out like what could we do here? This money, let's do. Oh, we can work with libraries now. Great. So because we've got funding to work with libraries, so now we're all going to be in a library and we're going to be pirates running around.
Yay.
I think it's really like love it, and it was a great experience. But you never put the two together and I think it's really important for young people to start having to put the two together, because I think it really, one, it changes how you feel about a piece of work, because what a privilege it is to be working with these libraries and running around and showing children that stories are still such an important part of their world, you know? But it also like I think it also makes us think a bit more strategically of like how can young people really support Highly Sprung to do the vision that it has, and how can we be a part of the process, and how can our voices shape the work, and how can we support you to think through what the Sprungs want to do. And I think for me that's why I wanted to join the board, was about how do we really build that bridge, because Highly Sprung does things in a way that is just so magical. And like I think for a long time, for a long time, you Highly Sprung held the Sprungs, and I kind of think it's time for the Sprungs to like hold Highly Sprung back a bit and be like, we've got you, because the work you do is incredible, and you build stronger and more confident and creative young people who can go out and take on the world. And like, we need to be shouting about that. Don't cry. It's the truth.
It's,
It really
it's
is the truth.
it's very touching and very moving to hear someone who's been through that process. And even when you were talking about those different projects, sorry, I've still got a lump in my throat, but that those
From my
projects,
head.
yeah, each projects, keeping the doors open at Highly Sprung, first of all, takes funding.
Mhm.
Keeping Sprung Youth, the prices low enough so that people can access them. That's not even taking consideration the funding for bursaries that we offer those children who otherwise wouldn't be able to access it, whether it's working in libraries, the physical fellowship, and even projects like, I think we didn't call it the Young Producers back then, but you were
Mm,
part of that young group of producers working when we did PALS
Yeah.
in 2014.
Yeah.
And those people who were designing costumes or designing the set, making the set with us, and
hmm
those, all of those different opportunities came about because of funding from, you know, arts funding bodies or individuals donating to Highly Sprung. And I think that's really, really important.
And Sian, as a 4-year-old in a tutu in my class, will never be forgotten when we had just marvelous, amazing times doing stories and playing with balloons. And that was a very special time. So, yeah, you have a big place in our heart. So, we're going to ask you a final question, the important
Mm.
question. Can we do it?
It is
What's
what's your
your effing
effing
creativity?
creativity?
Mine is, and I've said it already through the call, it's feeling.
Oh,
Because I think for me, creativity has always been the outlet for me to feel, whether it's through Highly Sprung, whether it's through music. I think that's always been where I turn to when I need to like process emotion. And I think what I was saying earlier of being in a job that doesn't like purposely doesn't kind of allow that kind of feeling is really hard, and it really pulls into question like how can you be creative and how can you kind of dream when you're not able to feel. So I think for me
yeah,
they're very tied together.
that's
It's
beautiful.
lovely. Yeah.
Love it. Thank you. And do you want to give a shout out to the musical side of yourself, which is the very, very talented
Oh.
duo? Go on.
Yes, I am a part of Rain the Girl Band, who are a acoustic indie folk duo. We do guitar, we do music, we do vocals. And my partner in crime is Lily, who works for Media Mania, which is another amazing organisation in Coventry.
And you
Yeah.
literally have the voices of angels.
Ah, stop. Stop it. Now you make me blush.
Oh, but thank you, Sian. Thank you for being part of today's podcast, but also thank you for being part of our journey. And without a doubt, young people like you have helped shape who we have become and all of the ambitions that we have for Highly Sprung's future. So we're so glad that you're still part of the journey with us. And woohoo, let's hope that this funding campaign brings us all of the joy to give on to other young people. So thank you. We're going to say goodbye.
Yeah. Thanks, Sham.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Where's the F in creativity?